There's discomfort in Bangladesh over former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's statements from India. Well, Chief Advisor to Bangladesh's interim government, Mohd Yunus, has said in an interview to PTI, in fact, he also added that Hasina's remarks were an unfriendly gesture and that if India wants to keep her until the time Bangladesh wants her back, the condition would be that she has to keep quiet, Yunus added. The caretaker advisor also said, and I quote, "Sitting in India, she's speaking and giving instructions," unquote. His remarks, remember, are coming in after Hasina released a statement demanding those involved in killings and vandalism justice for those during the anti-government protests. She asked for those people to be identified and punished. In fact, Mr. Yunus also has an advice for India. He stressed that while Bangladesh's values strong bilateral relations with India, New Delhi must move beyond the narrative that portrays every other political party except the Awami League as Islamist. And to discuss these comments and what it really means for bilateral ties between the two countries, I'm now joined by Veena Sikri, Indian former High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Thank you, Ms. Sikri, for joining us this evening. We'll, of course, speak about the big policy points, but let me first get your comments on, Mohd Yunus and the kind of statements that he's made towards Ms. Hasina. I mean, he's a Nobel laureate, favored by the West, the champion of democratic rights, and actually asking a former prime minister, who's a female prime minister, former prime minister, to keep quiet. All this while, he speaks of democratic values, and we did see the kind of comments that came in after, of course, he was chosen to lead the country.
Well, I must say that I find Professor Mohd Yunus's comments totally surprising and more than a little unacceptable. Because the thing is that while Sheikh Hasina was certainly, she left the country on the 5th of August, but what is happening in Bangladesh after the 5th of August is actually the same as what they were accusing Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina of doing. They were accusing her of being anti-democratic, of not reforming the parties, of not allowing political parties to take part in the elections and so on. And now the interim government led by Professor Mohd Yunus is doing exactly the same, because they have completely tried to eliminate the Awami League, that is Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's party. They have tried to eliminate the Awami League from any kind of participation or any kind of activity in Bangladesh at all. And they were not even invited for the swearing of the new government. They're not being, recognized as a political party which has about 30-40% political support. I think this is very surprising, because one would have expected that when, you are accusing the former prime minister of doing certain things which you consider undemocratic or unequal or non-inclusive, but you are doing the same things yourself. And secondly, I think that when he says that, India sees every other party as Islamist, this is not correct. I myself was High Commissioner to Bangladesh at a time when the BNP was in power, when Prime Minister Begum Khaleda Zia was the Prime Minister. And we had I used to meet her very often. Of course, on policy matters, there were disagreements, there were problems on security issues, which were very, very important. But we were fully in touch with them. We knew all the ministers. I knew all the ministers. The Jamaat-e-Islami was a part of that government. I knew the Amir of the Jamaat-e-Islami, who was a senior minister. And so we kept in touch
with Ms. Sikri, then critical questions and very pertinent questions now being raised so far as, the democratic nature of the kind of dispensation that Mr. Yunus is leading. Those questions are coming. Let me also ask you, about the claim, that another claim that he's made, that India's concerns regarding minority killings are exaggerated. The fact that, even if one person dies from the minority community, that should be enough for, him to stop those attacks, or head of any government. And, especially because the Prime Minister and the External Affairs Minister have expressed those concerns about, what's happening with minorities. So how should India now look at these kind of comments coming in from Mohd Yunus, and what really is the message that he's trying to send to New Delhi?
Well, I think that Professor Mohd Yunus is controlled completely by the Jamaat-e-Islami. It is the Jamaat-e-Islami which is in charge, and they are the ones taking all the decisions about who will become, vice chancellors are being asked to resign, to step down. Supreme Court judges are being garrowed and told to leave. So it is really the Islami, the Jamaat-e-Islami and its student wing, the Islami Chhatra Shibir, that are in charge. So Professor Mohd Yunus is just going along with all the decisions that they are taking. As far as the action on the Hindu community is concerned, we do know that immediately after the 5th of August, when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina left Bangladesh, there was a direct an absolutely unacceptable attack on the Hindu community throughout Bangladesh. There were killings, there were rape, there were genocidal attacks, burning of houses, ruining of properties, and it was so major and so substantial. Our Prime Minister, even in his message to Mohd Yunus about his taking over as head of the interim government, he mentioned to him that please make sure the Hindu minority are safe. Then when Mohd Yunus telephoned him, he spoke to him about it again. Then our Prime Minister spoke about it on the ramparts of Red Fort on 15th August. And when President Joe Biden of the USA and Prime Minister Modi had a telephonic conversation, then again our Prime Minister raised the situation in Bangladesh and the situation of the Hindu minorities with him. Now, after that, maybe the direct killings have become less, but there has been an attack on the economic livelihoods of the Hindu minority. All their jobs, they're being forced to leave.
Yes.
Professors in universities are being forced to leave. Businesses are being burnt. Businesses are being threatened with intimidation. Boardrooms are being taken over. And today, as of yesterday evening, we have seen that there's a letter which has been written by the personnel department of the Bangladesh government,
Yes.
all
Yes.
ministries, to all public sector, asking for identification of Hindus. This kind of racial profiling has never been seen, I think, since the Second World War. That where you ask for people by religion. In
Absolutely. And,
any
and,
case, in
and Ms.
Bangladesh,
Sikri, he really needs to take cognizance. He really needs to take cognizance of that, instead of stating that these claims by New Delhi are really exaggerated. But ma'am, ties between the two nations are at a critical juncture. I mean, this really seems Mr. Yunus coming across as somebody who's asserting himself, who's asserting Bangladesh. And is he also trying to set the terms and terms of engagement, between India and Bangladesh? And I also want to understand from you, will India, looking at how things are currently between Bangladesh and India, the kind of, anti-India sentiment that there is there in the country, will India be looking at extraditing and acceding to Yunus's request whenever he makes that of, sending Hasina back to the country?
well, to take your last question first, I think there is, yes, you're right, there is an extradition treaty between India and Bangladesh. And under that, of course, the government of Bangladesh may well be thinking of making a demand. But in that extradition treaty, there is a clause of political aspect that if anything is considered to be a political reason for asking somebody back, then the country is not obliged to send that person back. But in any case, that question of extradition will be met when the request is made. But in the meanwhile, I think that the question of the kind of the treatment of minorities and the treatment of political parties in Bangladesh is one of big concern. I would say that our government has said very correctly right in the beginning that we are prepared to deal with the government, the interim government in Bangladesh. We are prepared to deal with them, we're prepared to talk to them, and we want to know from them what do they see about relations with India. I mean, all the projects and programs that were started with former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, which were all based on mutual benefit for the people of India and the people of Bangladesh. Let us say, for example, the supply of electricity, the supply of power, 1,200 megawatts minimum, going up to 3,000 megawatts was being supplied, which is for their industry. Without this power supply, the industry cannot function. Their exports are already being affected because instead of supporting economic activity, factories are being burnt to the ground if they are considered having belonged to a certain political party. So I think that economic activity is at a standstill. Colleges and schools are at a standstill. So we are very worried about what is happening within Bangladesh, and we'd like to know from them. We are fully prepared to talk to them, but we'd like to know from them how they see. Now, Professor Mohd Yunus has said in this interview that the ties are at a low.
Yes.
He hasn't said a high low or a low low or what kind of a low. But it is because in Bangladesh, there is a hugely concerted effort to create an anti-India mindset. People are going on with T-shirts when they're delivering relief from the floods. Teach your child to be anti-Indian. So it's a very, very clear and I would say even a vicious attempt to create the anti-India mindset to say we don't want anything from India. But that's their choice. It's their country. It's their government, interim government. If that is the way they want, then they should tell us this is what they want. And then, of course, there will be, whether it's petroleum products or power supply, then we take our own decisions on what to do. And then we take it from there. But I think this idea that Professor Mohd Yunus or certain editors, we've seen some very patronizing articles by certain editors saying what India should or should not do. I think it is very important for Bangladesh to consider first what they want to do for themselves if they want to revive economic activity, they want to revive educational activity, they want to revive the visit by medical.
Absolutely, ma'am. And given the kind of ties that Bangladesh has shared in the past few decades with India, of course, the ties between the two countries stand at a very, very critical juncture. But the big question, will these statements and what's unfolding in Bangladesh really mean another crisis for the two countries in terms of policy matters? We'll have to wait and watch out for what really happens in the next few months. And we do hope that Mr. Yunus is able to arrest that anti-India sentiment in the country as well, for ties between the two countries to move smoothly. On that note, thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us tonight on India Tonight. Thanks very much for taking the time out.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.